Thank you guys for coming. So, I'm really excited about this topic. It's near and dear to my heart. I've been involved in super apps for a long time. And today we're talking about kind of, if you think about the history over the last decade, we've been unbundling financial services and going into kind of the fintechs that have specialist offerings. But now, recently, there's kind of this move towards rebundling financial services and even broadening the services into the everything app. But it's quite debatable. So I have a wonderful panel of people to kind of debate the pros and cons of the everything app. I also wanted to kind of ask the audience and kind of give a quick poll. So I'd like to first ask you to raise your hand if you believe that we will have an everything app in the West as they have in the East. So raise your hand if you believe that we will one day have an everything app here in the West. I see literally 3 hands in a sea of people, so that's shocking. So you don't think it's gonna raise your hand if you don't think it will come to the West? Lots more hands. Now, do you want an everything app? Raise your hand if you want an everything app. Okay, so more hands. So there's actually more demand than actually predictions that it will actually happen. Okay, wonderful. So, and that we're going to discuss the pros and cons of the idea of moving to an everything app and also talk about what kind of advice should we give to brokers and financial services players. My great panel, I want to give a disclaimer. They are speaking on their own behalf. They are not speaking on behalf of their companies. So they're going to share with us their true personal opinions, not talking on behalf of their corporates. Keep them out of purgatory in their companies. All right. So starting to my left, I've got Slobodan, who leads a team of software engineers at JP Morgan. JP Morgan, I think we all know them very well. They have a market cap right that as of today of 860 billion. They have a PE ratio very modest of about 16. I also wanted to give a fun fact for each person. Slobodan is not only, he's a trumpet player and a guitar player. And within his band, he played in front of an audience of about 10,000 people. Nice one.
Thank you, Laura.
And I just found out today you also do tango,
Yes,
which
the
is
same as you, I
exciting.
think.
Yeah, I'm a tango girl too. Yes, and next we have Jordan. Jordan is the president of Robinhood. He launched Robinhood UK, and he's leading this. It's all about democratization of financial services. They allow people to trade in a user-friendly manner, things like stocks, ETFs, options, and crypto. So he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. And let's see, their market cap is 118 billion. Is that right? And the PE ratio is 55. So I guess that's reflective of a growing company. Fun fact for him, he started his career as a chartered accountant at EY in Cape Town. Great place to be a chartered accountant.
I didn't have 10,000 people watching me,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
No, not as a chartered accountant. They don't have a show called like LA Accountant. Yeah, not quite as sexy. Then we have Simon. Simon is the head of product at U. U was launched in 2021 by Swissquote. And it's an interesting one because Swissquote is actually, it does all, it does, it's a broker that allows people to trade everything from, gosh, stocks, bonds, derivatives, Forex, robo advice, mortgage advice, deposits. And then they did the opposite. Normally it's a bank that launches these things as a niche product, but instead they've launched a neobank. So that's kind of an exciting reverse type of relationship. In terms of his fun fact, I found out that he has rubbed elbows with two of my heroes, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, through the Clinton Global Initiative and a lot of fundraising and social media campaigns. Exciting.
Yes, and you could mention the market cap of Swiss quotes.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit
No, I don't know that. You'll have to tell me, what is the market
it's a
cap? I
bit
could
more modest, 8 billion Swiss francs.
8
So it's not too
billion
bad.
of Swiss quote. Very good. And apparently it was the one of the top performing stocks on the Swiss stock exchange.
Exactly.
Yeah. And last but not least, we have Jerry, who is the UK CEO of Interactive Brokers. Interactive Brokers is one of the most respected brokers in the worldwide. They are trusted in terms of both retail and institutional investors. They have a market cap of 110 billion and PE ratio of 34. They're right in the middle of the road. His fun fact, again, something that's I have something in common with all these people. He's fun. He's been a lifelong member of the Oxford Union, which is a debating club, and I do like a good debate. So let's get on with the show. Now, I'd like to open it up with them basically defining. I think we need to define what is a super app, what is an everything app in the West compared to the East. We'll start with you, Slow.
Thank you, Laura. I think we tried already to define it 2 years ago at a similar panel, and that was the trickiest bit, I think. So, for me, an everything app in finance would be an app that would cross sell different features that you wouldn't expect nowadays, at least in the Western culture, and that you have some greens that you can see that are already popping up in Asia, in East Asia, and South Asia. So let's keep it brief. That's my small definition. Let's see what the other guys have to say.
I think ultimately you want to have all of your financial needs in one app, and that's what we're building as a global financial super app, which caters for your active traders who want to trade options, futures. You name the instrument, they want access to it across their portfolio, which levels the playing field of retail versus institutional. You have wallet share with account types like retirement accounts, cash yield accounts. Those are bespoke in different countries, and I think we'll talk about how that's different in different places. And what we call the global financial ecosystem is you need to cater for this across the world. And I think at Robinhood, we have a global brand and we're building a global business, but there's still some way to go to make sure we're everywhere.
Yeah, well, I believe that you mentioned the difference between the West and the East when it comes to the interpretation of what is a super app and an everything app, right? But I believe that all of us here, to some extent, on the financial side, would offer quite a wide range of services, right? So would it be sufficient to say that a super app is just a bundle of financial services? I think that we need to be a little bit more Asian thinking here, because if we want to define what a super app can be or everything app can be, you have to step out of the financial world, and that's probably where the difficulty is. And that's probably the challenge, right? Because offering an additional financial service when you're a licensed player might be an easy step. The difficult step is to go beyond that, and that's probably what I would define as a super app.
I'm just going to add to that. To me, a super app is whether it's a platform that sits on the cloud or a standalone. Could also have education involved in it. You could have payments involved in it. You have some sort of social communities, and you have the ability in one platform to carry different wallets all in one account from either a GIA account or your tax wrapper account.
Right. And so the way I define a super app, having worked a lot with Alipay and WeChat Pay in the East, is that it starts off with a mobile wallet. This is, again, just my opinion. Starts off with a mobile wallet. It has some sort of digital identity. There's some sort of social connectivity in terms of chat, either connecting people with each other or businesses. And then on top of that, you have an apps within an app. So you might have a plethora of apps within one app, and then all working with AI to try to communicate with each other so that you can get more out of the people. But that's in the East, and it hasn't taken off here yet, that everything app. I think we have seen, I'm hearing from a lot of the panelists about the difference partly being financial super apps. So I think that in the West, we're already seeing financial super apps pop up. A lot of people talk about Revolut. I know that Simon, you did say that your ambition is to be a super app. I think there is some ambition, but let's talk about a little bit about the market differences. So what are the headwinds, the opportunities, the blockers in the West for developing that everything app?
Maybe I can just give from my technical expertise some of the challenges here in the West to building a super app. So the main challenges today is that we have a quite a mature market here in the Western world, with users being quite picky, and they want to find the best app for the need that they have. So bundling different features together might be something risky from different points of view, but from a technical perspective, you want to have a smooth UX, smooth UI, so that the user actually understands what's going on inside of this app. I think that the way in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and East Asia, the culture has been set, and what are the expectations, it's a little bit different. Where, for example, we've been mentioning Grab in our introductory calls. Out there, the level of refinement of the UX and UI is not at all at the same standards as you would expect here in the Western world. And technically speaking, if you want to have an iOS app, an Android app, a web app, you have to think cross-platform, but still to have some premium features that each of these platforms offer. So it's quite a challenging approach to achieve that nowadays, I think, in the Western world compared to the East.
Slow comes at this from an engineering background, so he knows how to actually get it done. And the key thing I heard there was a little bit about the fact that we are a mature marketplace, so there's a lack of need that there might have been in the East. Yeah. What do you think, Simon?
I think it's also the level of localization. You think the US, for example, it is a large, relatively uniform market, but in some cases, there's still state by state regulation, which might mean the ability to just be a one single app across everywhere isn't always possible. And then you look at the UK and Europe, and that's heightened. You have bespoke local requirements in European markets, customer needs, language, currencies, payment in, payment out, the asset classes that they're interested in, the types of derivatives they trade. I think just that level of kind of localization just makes it that much more of a barrier to have a single app that just pleases everyone. And that's not a bad thing, that customers have unique demands that need to be catered for. I think that's where you see that the West is a slightly different market than perhaps what you've seen on other parts of the world.
More niche, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, I think what's interesting is that in the East, most of the financial super apps were built by non-financial players. So it started with Grab, for example, in Southeast Asia. So it's it's like a ride-hailing app to start with. Then they expanded into financial services. You have the same with Alipay. It's coming from the e-commerce space. Whereas in Europe, I guess we are in a more, and in the West, we're in a more mature market, where regulation is stronger and habits are stronger as well. The trust towards established institution is more solid. And I guess it's more difficult to come up with a brand new way to consume your financial services, right? A little bit like in Africa, they leapfrogged the wired telephone, right? They went directly into the mobile phone. I guess that Southeast Asia, from a financial services perspective, leapfrogged Europe and the Western world by having new ways of dealing with them and interacting with them.
And by the way, Simon, you talked about when we talked earlier, you talked about trying to increase relevance because you're a niche product, but you want to broaden. And is that something that you think we can do here?
Yes, I think basically everything we do all together on that stage and other players are vying for attention and relevance in our clients' daily lives, right? We're like teenagers and we crave for attention because we realize that if we're only useful at one specific time during the day or during the year, what are we down the line? And we need to be way more central to our clients' financial lives. There are many ways to do it. So you expand your financial services, or you try to be relevant in other settings outside of the financial world. So then you can create this, circle of self-feeding reinforcement that will serve your business as a whole. And I think this is what we're all trying to do today.
And last but not least, again, Jerry comes from also a compliance, a governance, regulatory background. So I'm sure he's going to bring something different to the table.
Uh, well, we'd like to see a super app. I'd like to see it. However, regulation is fractional around the world. If I had a super app here in the United Kingdom, I have to think of GDPR. I have to think of e-payments and money regulation like PSD2. In addition to that, you got the Digital Market Act. All of these regulations would stop me from being able to layer all of these features onto a super app. And that's only if I service the customers in the United Kingdom or in Europe. Now, if I go into the United States, each state is going to come after me for different types of products that I want to offer. And that will slow me down. I think all of us, could we deliver as a company, as an organization, a super app? Technically, I have no doubt. Could we offer it operationally? I have no doubt. However, the largest barrier that I see for a super app in the West is regulation. It's too fractionalized. Until that's solved, the limitations will be put on all of us.
And one thing we didn't talk about is people's privacy concerns in the West. What do you think about that? Is there it seems like in Asia, people aren't as concerned about their privacy. As you know, we're having a little debate about digital identity. Do we want that or not? So what do you guys think about, anyone have any opinions on privacy concerns?
Well, I mean, again, when we bring up Asian apps, JoJerk, you have WeChat, Apple Pay. Some of the most controversial things have been that they're centralizing all of this data. You're putting all your personal data. The government has access to it. If you go and roll it out, that becomes a privacy issue. The West, the customer, our feedback loops say the customer doesn't want to put everything on one app. Effectively, there are a lot of apps, whether they're in banking, brokerage, that do exist, but the Western type of customer is a little bit precarious about putting everything on all their marbles. There's so many scams. If you basically go after someone's identity and you go into the super app, you have access to money, you have access to any kind of personal information. So the customer sentiment in the West is a little bit more sensitive than it is into the East. And I think that that is a big friction point.
If I may just bounce back to what you said previously about the stance that you think that technically we are a bit able to do it, I would just want to add that when you take into account all these legal, compliance, product stuff, actually all of them spill over to the technical side and they make it exponentially more complicated. So it seems from a product side that it's possible, but when you add up all of these requirements, then you would end up with or a messy app or something that doesn't fulfill the needs of that's at least my stance. So that can be also a slopey terrain, maybe thinking that nowadays we are able just to, maybe with the help of AI, all of this I think is not something we could expect today.
Any more thoughts? Anyone willing to give up their privacy for the greater good?
I can't speak on behalf of Asian customers in terms of their privacy, but I think Jerry's point's right. Like you have GDPR, you have an evolving privacy regulatory framework in the US, which does put greater onuses on businesses, and it is what some customers really do need. Customers also have more choice. There's a lot of competing brokers and competing apps. So, a customer may have all four of our apps on their phone, which is a great challenge for us because we want to make sure they have the best experience and they delete three and keep one. Perhaps in the East, there's a little bit more of a monopoly in some places where one app's the winner and it isn't necessarily competing, and customers have less of a buying power to say, I want my privacy protected because otherwise I'll go somewhere else. And it also may be in time that the East does catch up with regulation around privacy and data. So I think the winds may shift, but it just articulates what Jerry points out. Lots of different markets, lots of different requirements, and now the engineering team needs to build it. It's going to be a lot harder.
Now, changing tack a little bit, we all know that big tech is trying to play in the kind of super app game, and they're trying to get into financial services. Do you have any worries that as we build financial super apps and niche services, is there any worry that we might just be kind of taken over and swallowed up into one of these big tech super apps, becoming almost a widget to a big tech super app like a Meta or Apple?
Wh- Yeah, well, that's a good question. I believe that to some extent, when it comes to Apple, we are somehow very deeply woven into their ecosystem. And to some extent, if today you were to take out, or if today Apple were to decide that you is not available, I'm talking about you here, but Robinhood or whoever, not available on the App Store anymore, suddenly you would have a lack of presence in many pockets, right? And so I think that to some extent we are dependent on big tech. I also believe that more than big tech is the new technology that emerges. I will not say anything groundbreaking here, but I believe that this layer of AI that we can add up on top of everything, we're starting to see that in the e-commerce side, potentially could come down to the situation where you ask ChatGPT or Claude to actually trade for you and find the best conditions for you to trade without you as a client never opening the Robinhood app or the U app or interactive broker. So I think what is key is that we find, again, I talk about relevance, we find a way to stay relevant in that changing world, because the way people will interact with their traditional services is evolving. Now you're talking to someone to actually do actions, take actions, rather than opening an app to actually click on the action. So I think that's the real challenge here, more than the actual big tech, is the change in behavior with the customer.
If there is ever going to be a super app, I think it's going to be from the side of either a banking, an investment house, a brokerage entity, opposed to the other way around. To me, for example, Amazon is a very good example. They've been in business for a very long time. They've gone vertically, horizontal, and diagonally. They've talked about having financial services. They've got e-payments. They have collaborations with other third parties, but they can't get over the barriers of regulations, of privacy. In addition to that, customer service, right? I mean, once I start layering all on my super app, how am I going to be able to service all of these different features? Let's say I have a Deliveroo service and now I have a banking service or I have a brokerage service, right? That customer segment, their customer service has to be trained, has to be able to be prompt to make sure that when your food is not there, they know what to do. But more importantly, when your money doesn't hit your account, that they are on the clock with the regulator and they need to deliver a good outcome. Those challenges, all of these large entities that you mentioned, haven't been solved over the years. There's a lot of case studies. So that's why I believe that if there is a super app, it's going to come from one of these entities that specializes in the financial services, and then they will branch out horizontally, opposed to the other way.
Because they're regulated, right? We trust them. I mean, I used to work at Meta, and I used to ask people, and I'll ask you guys right now, raise your hand if you would put your money in Facebook. There's actually a couple people. There we go. 1, 2, 3 people say, yeah. Why not? They're risk takers. You're just going to say something, Jordan?
I think those type of services, they become complementary to your financial life. So you take Gemini. I think Lloyd's published a study the other day where 28 million Brits had used an AI model for financial related questions, which is a huge unlock, because one of the biggest problems here is financial education, financial literacy, and that confidence gap of, I want to get started, I don't know how, I don't know who to ask, I can't afford advice. I think the ability for AI to fill some of those gaps, albeit it's probably sitting in your Gemini app complementary to your Gmail, but next to that, you probably got one of our apps open and you didn't know how to get started. Now you do. So there's a world where actually, whilst you may be thinking, when do they eat us? Actually, they probably help us.
If I may add, you mentioned just Meta and Facebook, and we were talking about relevance. I think that Facebook has, in the last 10 years, lost a lot of its relevance and share. And you can also see in the refinement of the product nowadays, they've tried adding multiple new features, evolving kind of towards a super app, but it hasn't worked that well. And now when you open the Facebook app, it's really buggy. It's not a premium experience from what you would expect from one of these GAFAMs and one of the largest tech companies. That's at least my standpoint.
Excellent. And now, one more thing that's another difference that we have in the West is that we've been launching open banking, then open finance, we're moving to open data, and of course, we're talking a lot about AI. How does that impact our version of a super app versus the East?
I think it's very positive. That's the structure, the back end for a super app to actually exist, where you have peer-to-peer, where you basically eliminate a lot of the middle entities. So anything that comes with open finance is a stepping stone right into a super app. So I think it's a very positive that in the West, we're basically seeing that phenomena come on, and you're seeing more regulators in the United States, for example. I think the head of the SEC is very pro of open finance, open banking. In addition to that, there's something called Crypto Project that he basically is animate about creating a super app behind the structure. So I think you have the fundamentals there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good. That's the main key difference between the West and the East, probably, is that it's going to be the way you regulate a super app. And through open banking, open finance, and all, you basically can see or foresee a super app, because then you would integrate every other players into your own ecosystem. So the question would be, who would be taking the crown there, right? In terms of experience, in terms of solving client needs. But that's definitely the bedrock of a potential Western version of what a super app is.
It's also around adoption of stablecoins as a good kind of use case, right? I think the US has recognized that will help them leapfrog in terms of catching up on payments somewhat in terms of retail experience. It's quite crazy to think that in the US, some of the payment types versus here, the UK is miles ahead. Our experience is actually really good. We don't do a great job of telling that story of how good it is, but I think the US has recognized we've got the Clarity Act, the Genius Act. Paul Atkins, as you say, he stands up and he's positive, he's confident, he wants America to build for America and be first. That becomes another fundamental engine of generating a super app. And if you're then trying to take that to other markets, which have a slightly different approach, if you're a US, UK, European business that has slightly different regulatory headwinds or different customer needs, it's quite hard to just kind of port and drop.
Great. Okay, now I want to put ourselves in the customer's shoes. And what are the trade-offs between going deep versus going wide? So you're a customer. Do you want to have a niche product that's very specialized and offers all the special bells and whistles for that niche? Or do you want to go wide so that you have maximum relevance and convenience?
I think at least here in Europe, you have a tendency in the last 15 years to go deep, to have specialized actors. You can see it in finance, you can see it in social apps or any different kind of different sectors. So it seems to me that going deep is a good thing. It's just, we just mentioned open banking, open finance. I think this enhances also having more different finance sectors being related to each other, so that they can work between them, and that kind of beats the purpose of having a super app, because if all of them can smoothly and in a straightforward manner communicate and exchange data, why would you need to have a super app if already the communication between different actors works smoothly?
That's the open finance thing. So it's already there, so you don't need the one app.
True.
But customers want everything. If you ask them, they're impatient, they're demanding, which is great because it sets the standard for us. I think as a business, you just have to think about it in arcs. Like for us, it's being number one in active traders as the near term goal. that what runs in parallel is building up all the products and features for wallet share for long-term financial lives. That's a slightly longer term goal, over 5 years. And then being a global financial super app, it's going to take us 10 years. And I think just making sure you know what you're building, when and why, and giving yourself the time so that by the time you get there, it's actually really good, because customer demands are really high.
Yeah, I think what is important is to keep true to yourself. So if we take the example of Robinhood, and I'm a big fan, so what I see is that they build their success on making financial market accessible, cheap to access, etc. But they're expanding now. But I know, and knowing them, they need to stay true to themselves in terms of the type of experience they offer, right? If you start widening up, but you actually alienate your core customers, then you're creating something of a hybrid model that doesn't work. What you need to create is an ecosystem that feeds itself, as I said before, and that serves each of the business lines that you're creating. And so that's why it's so difficult to do. And that's why you talked about 10 years down the line, because it takes time to actually grow in the way that makes sense for your actual existing customers, and also to your verticals on which you are known for, right?
I agree. I think customer wants to go deep. For myself, if I use Deliveroo as an example, I use Deliveroo, but if you get my order 10, 15 minutes late, I don't care. However, if I use these gentlemen to execute an order, I want to see where my money is instantly. I want that service. That's the most important thing. I want them to protect my money, to be able to show me where my money is. If it's late, I begin to panic and I become to worry. Every time they add and broaden up to their service, where they offer either entertainment or health, they're kind of watering down their core. And I think the majority of the customers are customers of them because of that deep value that they have. They're not that interested in if my order is late by 5 or 10 minutes, but they want to make sure they deliver on their executions and the safeguards to their money.
And Laura, you were asking before, Swissquote took the route of actually creating a neobank, which has this pay, save, invest value proposition in Switzerland, which was a value proposition we were already offering, but with a deeper focus on the trading side. And we realized that probably in order for us to convince a new generation of traders, we had to move away from our offering, but we couldn't do it by just refactoring what we were doing, because we would be alienating too many of our existing customers. And so that's why this venture that I'm representing today, you, was created, is for us to be able to widen up without actually alienating the initial customer base that we had.
The other part, I think we've said it's inherent, but it's customer service. That as you build out these new products and you think about some of our platforms, someone might be trading complex strategies, maybe trading on leverage. When they have a problem, they actually want to speak to someone. And there's a lot to be said for that, that when you can actually be a customer, you have the option to use chat, phone, email, and you can speak to a real person. I think that's just a lot goes towards trust, loyalty, and as Jerry says, it's your money, and we take that seriously. It's your lifelong savings. So as you build these products and services, it's making sure your customer service stays at pace with that, and that service is always amazing. So you just build that customer trust over time, and that customer who started with you 10 years later has now got all your products, but they've been on that journey with you.
If I just may add, I think that the large banks that have 100 or 150 years of existence are miles ahead in front of neobanks for the older generation, not for the younger ones, because still you have people, super wealthy people in the world, who want to grab their phone and say and call their private banker and go for this trade or move their money quickly. They don't want to open an app that's not going to be super stable and reliable and do it themselves. And then if they have a problem with the customer support, end up chatting with an AI bot and trying to get access to a real human behind that. So I see also this point of view being quite relevant.
Excellent. Great answers, guys. And now we have 6 minutes left. So I want to give 4 minutes to the audience to ask questions, and then we're going to wrap up with some predictions. So I see one hand up over there.
Hi there. I'm trying to build a social network. So my question is, what's your favorite social network? And do you plan to have features of that social network in your super app?
Yeah. So my favorite social network, I spend too much time on them, but I would say, I mean, Instagram for me is probably the most, the one where I would turn the most. When it comes to whether we will implement that into our ecosystem, I doubt it, to be honest. I think it would be, at least in Switzerland, and I talk from a Swiss perspective, it would be seen as a mistake from probably our clients to see some kind of social media into our ecosystem for now. And we're talking about cultural differences. It might be very different in the East, might be different in some countries as well, in Europe as well. But in Switzerland, at least, that's not something we would ever, at this stage, imagine.
Wanted to say my favorite social network is that it's called Couchsurfing, and I don't know if you know about it. It was a great thing back in the days, 10 years ago, and now it's that. So most probably I wouldn't incorporate it if I was to build a super app.
Personally, X is something I use a lot. I think more and more the market is the news, and that convergence is live and real time. In terms of favorite and integration, we've actually announced Robinhood Social, which is our own. So I'm going to vote for that one.
Social network that I personally use is LinkedIn. And effectively, the other social networks, compliance, regulation kind of limits me. So I'm not going to go into that. Our customers primarily use WhatsApp, basically Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
I'm actually addicted to TikTok, but I don't see how that works in the financial services world.
You'd be surprised how many people go there for their financial advice.
So, well, it's tailored to you. I see only what I want to see. It's great. Okay, I'll take you up front since you have the courage to sit up front, and then I'll get you, sir, in the back.
Hello, Vahid here. I just have a question regarding the issue of privacy. I'm glad Jordan at least said that he wouldn't be talking for the Asians. Where do you get your research about this idea of the people in the East, wherever the East is, from East Croydon to Japan, don't care about privacy? And we, although talk about this so much, because there are lots of research which shows the opposite, that there is a lot more obedience and complacency in the West, particularly in Europe, compared to skeptical people towards government and businesses in the so-called East?
Well, I mean, there is research that shows that, if, for example, WeChat, the government has the access to the data. So privacy right there from day one is always going to be leveraged by, Big Brother. It's quite different than in the West. If you have here in the United Kingdom and you build a super app, GDPR, let's say, for example, I have a travel or a leisure side to my offering. GDPR is going to prevent me from giving that service or that layer, whether I outsource it or whether I use it, to be able to take my data of my customers that are investing over to that. So those controls, those safeguards exist. On the Far East, I'm not saying that the individual is not sensitive to the issue. However, again, anytime that I use WeChat, the government has universal access. That's a big differentiating point.
Acceptance versus, sir, I'm going to take you in the back. Last question, and then we'll move on to predictions.
Quick question. So there's a lot of brokers here today, right? And everybody probably out there will say, I'm building a super app. You got Interactive Brokers, you have Swissquote here. Robinhood's a little bit more boutique style in terms of just stocks and maybe some pensions, but everybody's talking about building the super app. How do you guys see that you can compete with the crypto exchanges that are out there are now starting to move into the brokerage space and other pieces? You got traditional CFD brokers moving more into the stock space and starting to offer all these other services, right? So, I can understand you guys being able to service your current customer base, but how do you break out of that mold to be that one super app that people want to be in, that environment?
Yeah, maybe if I can react on this, I think it's a very good point and fair point. I believe that what we see is a convergence towards basically all financial players offering more or less the same experience and scope of services. So the risk is that in this sea of sameness, basically, how do you stand out? How do you stay relevant? And that's a very good point. I don't have the answer to that. What we want is that we offer the best experience possible to our current client base and potential future clients. But it's true that down the line, if we look at Robinhood is doing, when I look at you, I'm like, I want to do the same. And probably you're looking at others and say, we want to do the same. So the problem is that we're converging. And the question will be, when we all are the same, what do we do? And I think that's going to be one of the questions for the future.
Not necessarily saying that we want to be a super app. We want to make sure that our core business model is at the forefront of servicing our customers. When it comes to the crypto side, like I said, in the United States, there's a project called Project Crypto that the SEC is heading up, where they're trying to convert a lot of crypto space into becoming a super app. I think in the United States, you'll see that phenomena grow and grow because of less regulation. With ourselves, I think most of us already have crypto, basically part of our offering and all that. And if you're going from crypto over to our world, which is securities, financial derivatives, I think it's a little bit harder for a crypto company because, again, external regulation. It prevents them from marketing their products. It minimizes their breadth into a lot of jurisdictions. I'm not saying that it's right, but they do have that basically guardrail around them. No different than us when we go out and offer crypto. We can't go out because of financial promotion restrictions in this company. So it's hard for the crypto company to actually push out their value proposition because of all of these guardrails. However, I do see that you're going to see in the crypto space, probably primarily in the United States, they're going to have a huge impetus because of the SEC crypto project to be the super app.
Right. Wait, we are over time, but I'm going to give everyone one word. When I say one word, I literally mean one word for your prediction.
Fragmentation.
Fragmentation.
Helping.
What was that?
Helping the customer. So helping.
Helping. Okay.
I would AI maybe.
Prediction markets.
Very good. I love it. Say thank you very much. Give it up for a great panel.